Hello and welcome to Unpacking the Know, Module 1, Segment 1, Who the Children Are. This training is hosted by 3 different SWAN affiliates, JFS of Harrisburg, IHRS, and FUN. But in our work and conversation, we do represent permanency workers throughout the state of Pennsylvania who are experiencing some of the same realities in their area of practice. As an overview for the whole group of trainings, Module 1 is again who the children are. The second module is debunking myths and misconceptions. Module 3 covers the roles of agencies, and Module 4 for families is next steps. So the first thing I want to say, if you're a family tuning into this recording, is just thank you for being here. We are rooting for you. We just want to roll out the red carpet and say thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about who the children are in Pennsylvania that are waiting for a permanent home. Who you are is what we call a resource family. So that word and that term encompasses a whole variety of different types of families, including foster, adoptive, kinship, single, married. Any family willing to open their home to a child and support them is a resource family. So thank you so much for being here today. The purpose of this module is to answer that question for you. Who are these kids? Who are the kids who are waiting for a home here in Pennsylvania? And we want you to leave this recording, this video, with a clear sense of who those kids are. So before we dive into that information, I want to share a very quick story with you from my life prior to entering into this line of work. Before I started working in child welfare, I worked at a community center in York, Pennsylvania, and this center had a lot of amazing amenities. Part of my job in the membership department was to help people sign up for membership and just showcase what was offered when you joined at the center. And I'll never forget this one day when family came in and they stated repeatedly what they really wanted was access to an outdoor pool for the summer because their daughter just loved to swim. The only thing was we only had an indoor pool. And all throughout the tour, I'll never forget this family kept kind of asking about like pool options and things like that. Even though I showed them our pool and it was indoors, they kind of just acted like they were expecting, like behind door C, we had some, outdoor pool hidden that they weren't being given access to. So I share this story because it's an experience that we want you as a prospective resource family to avoid. If you're here to support a child who needs permanency, we want to be really clear, upfront, and honest with you about what the needs are and about what signing up for this journey involves. If we don't have an outdoor pool, we are not going to mislead you or get your hopes up that one exists. The purpose of this module is to provide that honest and transparent information so that you're equipped with the information that you need to continue to the next step in the process to become a resource family. So the first piece of information that we have to cover when thinking about all of the youth who are in the child welfare system is that they have experienced trauma. Trauma is that umbrella that covers every single youth who is and has been in care. And I think it's important to start with that reminder, or maybe that's new information for you, because every child has been impacted by trauma, and that's without exception. These kids have experienced trauma, abuse, and or neglect, and they are going to need a special level of support from a family to overcome those hurts. So as a family, what you can expect is for a youth placed in your home to need ongoing therapy services throughout their life, other types of special support services such as behavioral and mental health. They might need special medical care or other types of custom interventions to address the impact of that trauma. There are a lot of behavioral effects of trauma for youth. And to introduce you to another term that we commonly use in my world, that term is special needs. So if you go the adoption route, you're looking to have a family profile or home study completed by a local agency to adopt a child in Pennsylvania. That term, special needs, is an all-encompassing term that really reflects just the impact that kids have had from trauma. So your child will have special needs, and that's not necessarily intellectual disabilities as that is commonly described in the rest of society, but really we're talking about the impacts of trauma. So let's talk briefly about why these kids come into care. And you're going to see kind of the connection between the trauma that a child's experienced based on some of these reasons. So the top 5 reasons for youth for first-time foster care entries, according to the State of Child Welfare Report in 2022, parental drug abuse is 48%, neglect is 25%, a caregiver's inability to cope, 23%, inadequate housing, 16%, and child behavior problems, 14%. In my work and experience, a lot of these issues that bring kids into our care and into our homes are not standalone issues, but a lot of times they are working in tandem or comorbid issues. So a parent might, be struggling with drug addiction, and that results in homelessness for the family, or that results in lack of supervision or neglect to a child's needs. So a lot of the kids have experienced home environments that have multiple of these issues at play, and are going to have the understandable consequences of that environment. So for the next section of this training, I want to highlight for you again who these kids are, the demographics and the characteristics that you're going to see, and the descriptions of who these youth are that you would be welcoming into your home. So the first big arc here under the trauma umbrella is youth between the ages of 10 and 21. So youth can be in care, in foster care, from birth up to age 21. We define youth as older youth, generally when they are 10 or above, but I'll talk a little bit more about what some of the greatest needs there are. So between 2017 and 2021, out of over 100,000 children entering foster care, 33% of them were over the age of 13. For that same time period, out of over 10,000 children re-entering care, which means they've gone home or found permanency at some point or are coming back, half of those kids are over the age of 13. So we have a huge need for youth, families to parent youth who are over the age of 10. And there is another kind of special demographic within that group that you may have heard about before, and that is youth who are aging out of care without a family. So in 2021, about 18% of children between the ages of 16 and 20 had a permanency goal of another planned permanent living arrangement, or APLA. So that's a lot of acronyms, but basically it means 18% of kids aged 16 to 20 had a goal for their permanent arrangement not to be a family, but to be another type of living arrangement, which is not further specified. So there's a huge need for families willing to support these youth as they age out of care. In 2022, 658 youth between the age of 18 to 20 aged out of the system without a permanent family. And on a federal level, of approximately almost 8,000 21-year-olds who had been in foster care, 28% of them had experienced homelessness in the last 2 years. Less than 2% had an associate's degree. Less than 1% had a bachelor's degree. And 3% had a vocational certification or license. 50% of those youth who aged out without a family were receiving housing, financial, or food assistance and Social Security, and 19% had experienced incarceration within the last 2 years. So the youth in the system who need your help and support, many of them are older youth. In conjunction with this training in Module 4, we have a video recording where we spoke with one specific youth who had aged out of foster care without a permanent family, so that you can put kind of a name and a story to that experience. So I'd really highly encourage you to check that out. A second group within the child welfare system that answers the question who these kids are LGBTQ youth. So LGBTQ youth are overrepresented in the child welfare system. And that is true, even though they are likely underreported due to risks of harassment and abuse if their identity is exposed. So studies have found that about 30% of youth in foster care are members of the LGBTQ community, and about 5% are transgender. And that is compared to about 11% of youth in the general population are part of the LGBTQ community, and about 1% of youth not in care are transgender. So again, LGBTQ youth, highly disproportionate in the child welfare system. 30% of youth in care are in that community as compared to 11% in the general population. 5% of those youth are transgender as compared to 1% of youth not in the foster care system. These youth experience a higher number of placement disruptions, and many of them are due to conflicts regarding their identity. So studies estimate that nearly 40% of youth who experience homelessness are part of the LGBTQ community. So we need families to support these youth. These are who the children are. Another group that's disproportionately represented in the child welfare system are Black, Hispanic, and other minority youth. So in 2021, the Racial Disparity Index found that children who are Black, Hispanic, or of multiple races have higher rates of Child Protective Service referrals. Black children were 2.7 times more likely to re-enter child welfare services than their rate in the general population. So this means that from the get-go, people are making reports on children who are Black and Hispanic at a higher rate than they are making child welfare reports on children who are white or non-Hispanic. And Black kids are more than 2.7 times likely to be re-entering care than their white counterparts. Black children are also disproportionately placed in pre-adoptive homes and institutions. So we need families for these youth. We need families who can provide culturally humble and culturally competent care and can help these youth feel at home when they are out of their homes and are in out-of-home placement. Another category here that describes who the children are who need your support is children with special healthcare needs and neurodiverse youth. I'm going to explain a little bit more about what I mean by those two terms. So in Pennsylvania, about 26% of youth in foster care are identified as having special healthcare needs. And that can include youth who have a medical diagnosis and or youth who have special emotional or behavioral needs. So in Pennsylvania, about 12% of youth are identified with having a medical condition of that 26%, and about 15% are identified as emotionally disturbed. So they have mental health, behavioral health issues that need ongoing treatment. Up to 80% of youth in foster care have significant mental health issues as compared to 18 to 22% of the general population. So that's a very high number, and that number is again for a child regardless of their age. So youth who do have special healthcare needs and that includes behavioral healthcare needs, have longer foster care episodes and multiple placements, and they achieve permanency, which is finding their forever home or being able to be reunified with their birth family at lower rates than their peers in care who don't have those disabilities. So prospective resource families should be prepared to meet the needs of these youth. Under this umbrella, we also include neurodiverse youth. And that includes youth who have brain differences because of the abuse and neglect that they've experienced. And that also includes youth who are just born with genetic differences. All of these youth, though, experience differences in their cognitive and social functioning in their own unique ways. So as an example of that, a survey from the early 2000s reported that 39% of the youth in the study in foster care met the diagnostic criteria for oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, and or ADHD. So the study is saying that 40% of the kids in this study who were in foster care met criteria for these mental and behavioral health diagnoses. That is compared to 12% of youth in the general population. Another example to bring home how this impacts a child is to bring up the conversation about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So it's estimated that about 70% of youth in care have been exposed to substances prenatally and can meet criteria for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder or alcohol-related neurological disorder. So, for example, when a child's in utero and their mother is consuming alcohol, that alcohol goes right into their brain and impacts their brain development. That is a lifelong condition that's not reversible, although there is a lot of treatment. So again, prospective families should be prepared to meet the needs of these youth. Last but certainly not least of a group that I want to bring your attention to is sibling groups. Children who are members of large sibling groups of any age are very hard to place. In my experience, I have seen sibling groups up to like 13 or 14 children. We really do not expect you to live in a mansion and be able to accommodate a group of that size. But families who are willing and able to help sibling groups stay together or help keep even a couple of siblings in a group together is really important as we look to recruit and support new resource families. Those are lifelong connections for those kids, and being able to stay connected with their siblings is just an unmatched gift that you can give to a child who comes into your home. So these are the children in the Pennsylvania child welfare system who are looking for resource families. They are looking for you for a loving, educated, and committed resource where they can stay and feel safe and supported. So as we kind of pivot from that information to some other information, I really want to spend some time focusing here on what I would call the good news. So the biggest piece of good news here is that a family who's willing to commit to a child in need that I've just described can make an immeasurable difference in their life. I just want to spend a moment acknowledging how hard and heavy that information that I just shared with you about who the youth are in our own communities who need help is for families to hear and learn about. I often tell my families, if your heart isn't breaking, then you're not doing it right. So if you've gotten this far in this training module and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot, I just want to validate those feelings and sit with them with you for a moment. And know that there are a lot of kids out there that need our support, and that's a really heavy feeling for families. But again, pivoting to the good news, a family who's willing to commit to a child who has these challenges can make an astronomical difference in their life. You can expect these youth to need those long-term therapeutic interventions that I mentioned at the beginning. But what they really need more than anything is a committed family who can help them through their grief and loss and help connect them with resources and who understand that trauma is really at the root of many of their challenges. But the good news doesn't stop there. Let's talk about more good news. Most families find their strengths line up with one or two of the youth categories that I just discussed. So we do not expect you to say that you can successfully parent an 18-year-old queer Black child who's a part of a sibling group of 10 and is also diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, and ADHD, okay? That child probably exists out there, but we don't expect or think that that every family is equipped to parent that. Really, our work that we do in this system is strengths-based work, which means that we look at your family and help you identify the strengths you have to parent a child. And so for most families look at this rainbow of who these youth are and think, oh yeah, like I could definitely support a child who, is diagnosed with autism. Like my niece has autism and she's the best. Or, I was a teen myself once, and I know how to, I think, teach someone to drive. Like, I'd be fine supporting a youth who's 16 years old. So if you were feeling some sort of overwhelm at that information, don't feel like you have to be the family to check every single box. Most families really find their strengths lie within one or two of those categories. Another piece of good news: a child who's placed in your care can experience a variety of firsts with you, regardless of their age. So, families have conversations with me as a recruiter a lot of times, and what they really want from parenting centers around living life with their child and getting to experience all of those beautiful first experiences with them. Traditionally, we think about that as taking first steps or, going off to kindergarten, things like that. But you can also expect to provide a 12-year-old child their first ever birthday party, or their first ever visit to see the Easter Bunny, or their first ever time participating in family pictures with you, or going on vacation. And I am not just presenting those examples as theoretical things. Those are real examples of experiences that one of my families provided a child in their care this year for the first time. Another piece of great news for many people is that there are other types of adoption if adoption from the child welfare system does not sound like a good fit for you. So, if you are watching this recording and feeling really strongly that your family is not able to support the youth that I have described, even with significant support from an agency, that is okay. Take a deep breath, let that weight come off your shoulders. The goal of this module is not at all to make you take on something that you can't handle, but to accurately share with prospective families which youth in the child welfare system are in need of support. There are a variety of other adoption avenues like private infant adoption, embryo adoption, and international adoption that might be the right fit for you. And if that is your family, we want to roll out that red carpet for you as well and cheer you along. Last but certainly not least, good news. We are here to help. We do not expect you to snap your fingers and feel prepared to take on any or all of this, but we, as affiliates and agencies in your local area, are committed to helping you build the tools in your toolbox so that you feel equipped to parent a child who needs your help. Being a resource parent has been described as hopping on a roller coaster or going bungee jumping. And I think that those are really accurate in some respects, those metaphors. But even if you're bungee jumping and you feel like you're diving off that bridge and you're going on this wild ride, you will have that team of people anchoring and supporting you on the journey. Thank you again so much for being here and watching this training module and being willing to learn about who the children are in Pennsylvania who are waiting for a resource family like yourself. As a reminder, this is module 1 of 4 different modules. So I would highly encourage you, after you take a couple minutes to process this information, to continue on and look at modules 2, 3, and 4. The last piece of information I want to provide for you to review is just some of the references that I have gathered, the statistics and things presented in this presentation, if that's of interest to anybody. The sources of those statistics and information is here on the screen. Thank you.